Hello everyone, welcome back to the Fight Noise video blog, Fight Noise vlog, whatever you want to call it, YouTube channel, video thingy. Pick the name you like and go with it. It doesn't matter to me. I just care that you listen, enjoy, and enjoy yourself. So thank you for coming on by. Today, or tonight, as you can tell nighttime by my amazing lighting setup, I look like I'm in a subterranean lair of some kind. You know, it's a work in progress, what can I tell you? Tonight, what are we going to talk about? Well, we can't talk about any of the upcoming fights because in all likelihood there aren't any upcoming fights. Nothing, there's some stuff booked. We have UFC 249 that's still on the menu, but I think with every day that passes, I think everyone gets less and less confident that that is going to materialize. I'm going to put that at about maybe 10 to 15% chance of that happening right now. Not basing that on a whole lot other than the whims of my intuition, but there you have it, not very confident. So, with no fights coming up, what can we talk about? Well, there is something really interesting we actually can talk about, if you ask me. What this break, this pause that we're living through right now, which hopefully gets resolved sooner rather than later, I don't know that anyone has the answer to when it will be resolved and when things will be getting back to normal may not be the right term. I mean, things may never get back to normal. This might be a move towards a new normal. But I am confident that eventually, at some point in the future, probably sometime this year, there will be MMA fights again. What will have changed is, regardless, I think, of this point of how long this pause goes on for, unless things get resolved tomorrow, which I think is essentially impossible, all of the UFC's plans, all of the divisional momentum and orientation, top contender, next person in line, who's going to fight who, all those plans, all those fights and stories that had a certain amount of momentum going into this basically just get chucked up in the fucking air and thrown out. And it's like hitting the reset button, basically, for not only the whole organization, but every individual division, every storyline, everything kind of just gets tossed out. And whenever we do get back to business as usual, we're going to be looking at a whole new, fresh set of circumstances to a large extent. So I thought it would be interesting to sit down and talk about some of the big, exciting matchups that were on the menu, that we were all, at least myself, getting very excited to watch, that now may still happen, or when we come back from the break, things might look a little bit different. And so what might those things look like exactly? Well, let's start with the fight that has been on pretty much everyone's mind. I got my little computer here, by the way, so I got notes. This isn't off the top of my head. Let's start with the fight that has been on everyone's mind, that everyone is essentially heartbroken over, because at this point it seems next to impossible that it will happen, at least in the near future. Khabib versus Ferguson. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, for a fifth time in a row, this fight has been booked and will fail to come to fruition. It is a damn shame, because it is, quite frankly, in my opinion, the greatest fight in UFC history, on paper at least. We've got to see how it would play out, but it is, and it will go down in history. If this fight doesn't happen, it will unquestionably go down in history as the greatest fight in MMA history to never happen. Period, end of story. Feel free to challenge that in the comments. It will fall on deaf ears. I don't even want to hear it. 100% the biggest miss in MMA history if that fight never happens, which at this point, frankly, I put it at maybe 50-50, that will ever happen. So, it's a bummer. I still think we should try very hard. By we, I mean, certainly not me. I mean, look at me. I'm in like a de facto mom's basement with recording myself on a phone. I have no, sway in this matter. But the powers that be should do everything in their power to make this fight happen. Everything. At all costs. I don't care if we don't have another card the whole rest of the year, as long as we get this fight. Try to make Khabib Ferguson at all costs. At all costs. Can't say it any more definitively than that. So let's try. It would be great. But given how things are playing out, I think there's a very real possibility we don't get it, and what might happen instead? Well, I think it's pretty obvious that, boy, this whole lighting setup is really coming down with the sweats. I think it's very possible that Conor McGregor slides in and takes that Khabib match. He's already been trying to do it. It's clearly the fight he wants. He clearly has the promotional power and pull to do it. With this fight now being delayed again, with things being reset, whenever we do get back to business, whether that be in September, October, November, December, I think there's a very real possibility right now, maybe I would put it at 50-50 as well, that Conor McGregor slides in after this break and gets the Khabib match. I think that is a very likely scenario at this point. Love it or hate it, I think that this break only makes that more attainable for Conor and more likely to happen. So don't be surprised if Khabib Ferguson turns into Khabib Conor later in 2020. I wouldn't be, heartbroken. It's still a great fight. Still a fight I want to see. I still want to see the rematch. It's not Tony Khabib. It's not the fight I would prefer. It's still a great fight, and it's still the kind of matchup we're going to need coming out of this very bizarre episode we're living through right now. So wouldn't be surprised to see Tony Khabib turn to Khabib Conor 2 later in 2020. Up next, Conor Gaethje. A fight that was not booked, but seemed to have a lot of promotional momentum behind it. Still, as of this moment, I think does. Still a fight that totally could happen late summer or whenever it is we get back to business. But, again, given this change, given this pause, Conor might be able to set his sights on Khabib and get that fight later in the year if the Tony Khabib fight does not happen. And if everyone's sitting out anyway, and he's not able to come back until September, October, God forbid, but it's a possibility. If he can get Khabib, I don't think he goes for Gaethje. I think he bypasses Gaethje and he goes for the Khabib fight. Doesn't mean he couldn't wind up fighting Gaethje after that at some later date. Totally possible. It's a great fight I would love to see. Great stylistic matchup. Gaethje has looked phenomenal in his last few fights. No one should be sad if that fight happens, but wouldn't surprise me, again, if Conor skips out for the Khabib matchup. And if he does, I'll tell you what would make not such a bad consolation fight for Gaethje would be Gaethje-Nate Diaz. Again, the Nate Diaz-Conor fight, still a possibility as well. That could easily be Conor's next fight. Gaethje versus Nate Diaz on the same card as Conor Khabib, that's not a bad lineup. That's not a bad story. That's not a bad strong foot forward out of this break for the UFC to put out there. Of course, that said, I think Gaethje Diaz could headline its own pay-per-view. So you might want to split them up too. But a fight I wouldn't be surprised to see. Gaethje's got a lot of momentum. He's got some good promotional ability, and if for his style is incredibly entertaining style, if nothing else. Gaethje versus Nate Diaz, I think, is a fight that the UFC would be interested in making. So wouldn't be surprised to see that either. Brian Ortega versus Korean Zombie. So this is a fight that was essentially booked, canceled the first time, I believe, because Ortega got injured, and then I think rebooked, or at least at a bare minimum, it was clear they were planning to rebook this as soon as Ortega was battle ready. Don't know if that ever happened or not. Still an amazing fight, still a great fight, but again, cards thrown up in the air. I'll tell you a fight I wouldn't mind seeing instead of that fight is Ortega-Zabit. Zabit Magomedsharipov versus Brian Ortega. That is probably the fight at featherweight I am most interested in seeing, period, end of story. That's the fight I would really like to see. It's a personal wish, but man, would that be an amazing fight. Please make it a 5-round fight. We need as many rounds of that fight as humanly possible. That's an incredible stylistic matchup. Amazing fight. So, Korean Zombie, Brian Ortega, also an amazing fight. Korean Zombie's a beat, amazing fight. Any mixture of those three guys, amazing fight. All incredible. But I tell you, should the promotional momentum and the narrative behind Ortega and Zombie slow down and dissipate during this break, Ortega's a beat, I will happily accept. What else we got here? I got a whole list. I'm very prepared. Okay. Jorge Masvidal versus Kamaru Usman. Very similar to Ortega Zombie, great fight, and for a title, for 2 titles, actually. I mean, you got the BMF, you got the welterweight. There's a whole lot of action going on there. A lot of metal in the mix, so to speak. But they have a lot of great momentum right now. Are they going to have that same momentum in 3 months? Masvidal's a guy who's got a ton of options, obviously. He's become a star in the past few years. Usman also has tremendous options. I mean, he is the welterweight champ. So I think that is a fight that could very well last, sort of wait out this period of time. Or should it dissemble in the interim, I wouldn't be surprised if we get, again, Masvidal, Conor McGregor is another possibility. McGregor with so many options. Masvidal still is a great option promotionally. That fight could happen. I also wouldn't be surprised to see Usman fight McGregor. And I know what you're probably thinking. This whole conversation is starting to sound like the McGregor sweepstakes. McGregor. Why don't you guys shut up about McGregor? But there is a point. There is a purpose to bringing him into all these different matchups. I think an interesting phenomenon is going to be that with a bizarre episode like this, where we have everything essentially on pause, I think the guys and gals who are gonna have the most leverage coming out of this period of time are the ones who have as much sustained star power and narrative driving ability. When we come out of this break, essentially it kills all the narratives. All the normal narratives, Kamaru Usman and Masvidal, yelling at each other at the press conference, Zombie and Ortega and their whole thing. All that stuff is interesting and it's great promotion for fights, but it will fade. It will fade the longer this goes on. People will start to forget about those things, and it makes those matchups less marketable, less actionable. So who thrives in that environment? Well, it's guys like, frankly, Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz. Guys who are already, and I think Masvidal's probably in that level too. Adesanya probably as well. We'll talk about him in a little bit as well, but he's probably in that mix too. But certainly Conor McGregor at the top of that list. Basically, people who are going to have, fighters who are going to have sustained star power to come out of this, basically no less a star than they were going in, and who also have the ability to come out of onto a fresh canvas promotionally, so to speak, and create a story, create a narrative, get people excited about a specific matchup. Conor McGregor has that ability. Nate Diaz has that ability. Masvidal probably has that ability. Adesanya probably has that ability. But that is a short list. And those small names, those few names, those are the guys that are going to come out of this break with, frankly, all the leverage in the world. And they're probably going to be able to pick their shot if they play their cards right in terms of promotion and hyping whatever matchup they want to pursue. Those guys are going to be able to, they're going to have a lot of power coming out of this, frankly. So that's why I keep mentioning McGregor. And I might mention him a couple more times. I might be done. We'll see. But it's relevant. So, Stylebender versus Costa. Great fight. Seemed like the no-brainer choice for middleweight champ versus number one contender, and maybe still is. I think it is still the no-brainer choice as of right now. But fast forward 3 months, if we haven't heard enough from Costa and there hasn't been any kind of sustained public animosity or trash talk between those two, I could see Darren Till sliding into that spot and getting the title shot against Adesanya. An equally great fight, and frankly, so far, Till seems to have done a more significant job of keeping his name out there, keeping himself in the right conversations. And it wouldn't surprise me if coming out of this break, as great a fight as Adesanya versus Costa would be, as deserving a number one contender as Costa is, he certainly will be fighting for the title soon if it's not next. It's coming. The guy is, I think, a star in the making. I wouldn't be surprised to see Till steal a spot and slip in line and get the next fight against Adesanya late in 2020. Again, depending on how long this whole business goes on. But I think Till is a little more poised to keep his name in the conversation. And it wouldn't surprise me if we get a shake up there and we see Adesanya Till later this year, which I would not be too sad about. That is a great, great fight. That's an amazing stylistic matchup. No one should be too sad if that fight happens, but I think we could see it. Stipe versus Cormier 3. This is a fight that not enough people are excited about. How could you not be excited about this fight? This is arguably the two greatest heavyweights of all time. Of all time. In a legit rubber match where they each finished each other in the preceding two fights. Cormier knocks out Stipe in the first fight. Stipe masterfully boxes Cormier and digs to the body and takes him out in the second fight. And we get the trilogy fight. People are not excited enough about this fight. This should be fight of the year. This should be the fight people are most excited about. I'm not getting that impression. It just doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of promotional momentum behind that matchup. As amazing a matchup as it is on paper, it seems like a total no-brainer. That said, the other thing about this layoff that is horribly unfair and a real bitch, frankly, is no one is getting any younger. And the longer this layoff goes on, whether it be 2 months or 3 months or 6 months or who knows how long, not to mention the fact that people, once we do restart, people are going to have to get back into the gym and train. Like, people aren't training the way they're normally able to train right now, most likely. I mean, gyms aren't able to operate the way they normally operate. So this has interference not just at the sort of promotional level where they're putting on actual professional fights, but at the training level, there's implications here. So this is going to cause delays across the board in a variety of ways. And Cormier, as phenomenal as he is, has already talked about retirement as of, a year ago. Like, no one goes on forever in combat sports or sports in general. And this is simply an additional period of time that is going to get tacked on at the end of his career here that is just going to make it harder and less likely. Certainly not impossible, and it's not that I wouldn't want to see the fight. Do the fight in 2023. I'll still watch it. It's an amazing fight. Cormier is a phenomenal athlete. If anyone can do it, he can do it. But being 3 to 6 months older is not to his advantage in this scenario. And it wouldn't surprise me, and I don't think Cormier would be the only victim of this. Wouldn't surprise me if we see several high-profile retirements happen during this break because of how long people are going to be out of professional competition and not making money, by the way, not able to train in the same way. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a few high-profile retirements occur as casualties of this specific situation, which I kind of just realized as I was talking about this, and it's actually pretty fucked up and sad, so that sucks. But nonetheless, I do think instead of Cormier versus Stipe, we could get Stipe Ngannou 2. Which, again, great fight. Not gonna be too sad here. That's an amazing fight. I think Ngannou has probably grown and learned a lot since the first fight. Probably in a much better position to fight a little more strategically, not burn out so early. And I think it would wind up being a more competitive fight. And Ngannou has certainly put himself, with the recent wins, in a position to fight for a title. I think he's certainly earned it. And it's really just a question of whether or not Cormier is going to be around to make that rubber match happen, which I hope is the case. If not, I think we get Stipe Ngannou, late 2020. Nate Diaz versus Dustin Poirier. This is a fight that was booked once. I think was it the original BMF fight? It might have been. I'm not sure about that. Fact check me on that one. But I believe it was booked one time. Poirier was injured, it fell apart. I believe they talked about booking it again. No complaints here. That would be a great fight. Sounds like if they've already gotten them to agree to it one time, it's doable. It can happen. They could make that fight happen. That would be a fantastic fight. But again, this takes me back to the phenomenon of the sport's biggest stars sucking up all the promotional leverage during this break. And Nate Diaz, I think, he's a very savvy guy when it comes to this stuff. He knows what he's doing when it comes to promoting fights. He's going to recognize, coming out of this break, that he holds a lot of big cards. And maybe he does want that Poirier fight. That would be an amazing fight. Or maybe he's able to parlay his situation into, of course, the Conor fight would be amazing. A fight I believe I mentioned earlier. What was I saying earlier? Gagey could be interesting. If he beats Gagey, he might put himself back in line to even fight for a title somewhere at lightweight. If he wanted to go back down to lightweight. I think he has options. So I'd love to see the Poirier fight. That's a great fight. But I do think that Nate Diaz is going to come out of this break, much like Conor McGregor. A lot of options, and might choose to go a different way. And I think he'll have the ability to do that if he wants. What else we got here? Woodley versus Covington. Woodley versus Covington. So this almost happened a couple weeks ago. Like on the fucking pirate cruise ship that the UFC was trying to book fights on for a little bit. That would have been incredible. I would have watched the shit out of that, as ethically dubious as that might have been. This fight, I can't believe this fight hasn't happened yet. This fight should have happened years ago, frankly. So this is one of the fights on this list. It might be the only fight on this list. It's the last fight on the list, so yeah, it's the only one. This fight, booked, was going to happen, still going to happen. Still going to happen, because there's no reason for this fight not to happen. It's the perfect fight. And it's a shame for Leon Edwards, who is totally deserving not only of the Woodley fight, but probably of a title shot. He might end up getting left out of this mix yet again, which is totally unfair. The guy's earned much better promotional treatment than he has gotten in the past couple years. That being said, the story, the promotional momentum behind Woodley and Covington, it's too good. It's too perfect. It should have been made years ago. And now the fact that they're both coming off of losses, I think puts them in a position where they have a little less leverage. They have fewer options, but they still have this matchup, which seems like such a natural clash of personalities, and they have the training history together, and it just seems too easy. I don't see this fight not being made, especially coming out of this break when the UFC is gonna need stories, gonna need fights that can generate interest. So that's the one fight on the list that was booked. If not booked, it was probably going to happen. That will definitely still happen. I don't see anything else getting in the way of that. I think that fight remains a fight to make, and I think we'll get that in late 2020, hopefully late summer, hopefully mid-2020, depending on how long this whole madness lasts. But in the meantime, I'm going to try and keep you guys entertained by talking about all this crazy stuff here in my underground bunker, whatever the hell this is. And, I hope you enjoyed it, and come back for more. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video with a friend, get on the phone and tell your mom and dad about the video. Look at it, your mom and dad would love this. Are you kidding me? Get the whole family involved. It's everyone. So, more coming soon. Stay at home, stay safe, be healthy, enjoy yourself as much as you can, binge some good stuff on Netflix. There's great fights on Fight Pass. Hit me up if you need recommendations for fights. I got endless recommendations for fights you can watch, old fights that are fantastic. And I'll be back more soon. All right, guys, take care.